Giant update, guys, in the Kohberger case comes from Fox News. Bryan Kohberger's catastrophic DNA mistake fast tracked his capture. What I'm going to do is I want to read this article. It comes from Fox News, Denver. They're the ones that broke the news. So I'd like to share this with you. And then I want to read off a little bit of how DNA sampling is collected and then analyzed. I thought you'd find that a bit interesting as well. But let me just read through this article. I think you're going to find this extremely interesting because you have this person right here that thought he was perfect, thought he can get over the system. But he made a lot of simple mistakes. And thank God he did make those mistakes. Not only was all that evidence found on that knife that he left behind, that sheath of the knife, I apologize, the sheath of the knife that he left behind, but you also got some digital forensics, showed him that he bought the knife, and then you got that Hyundai Elantra. So, I mean, he was bound to get caught, and that's why he pled guilty. That's why the defense didn't want that stuff brought in. But once they knew that they were going to be able to be allowed to present that evidence, he pled guilty. So genetic genealogists working at University of Idaho student murder case found hundreds of times more DNA than a typical case as they raced to solve the quadruple stabbing which rocked the college town of Moscow, Idaho, as well as the nation as a whole. It was a catastrophic deal, said Dave Middleman, the author and founder and CEO whose work generated leads that helped authorities track Kohberger from a DNA sample he left on the Ka-Bar knife sheath discarded at the crime scene. That's why the defense didn't want to talk about it. Not only did police recover plenty of DNA to work with, it allowed Otham's investigators to hone in on Kohberger's family tree almost immediately. Speaking with Fox News Digital at CrimeCon 2025 conference in Denver, Middleman said that while their early leads didn't include his identity, the DNA showed that the sample came from a multi-generational American family mixed with Italian ancestry. The genetic genealogy pointed to a multi-generational Pennsylvania family that intersected with Italian heritage only twice. It was more than trace DNA, too. The DNA evidence was amazing, David Middleman said. There was tons of DNA, by the way. I don't know why it's been reported it was just a trace. It was not. It was tons of DNA. There was certainty in the quality of the DNA. There was certainty in the analysis. And there was certainty that there was more than enough information in that family tree to get to a person, he said. Separately, police had identified a suspect's vehicle, a white Hyundai Elantra, just like the one Kohberger drove. He was from Pennsylvania, but was attending Washington State University in Pullman, Washington at the time of the murders. That's just 10 miles from the crime scene. So there's so much here. While police did not find a murder weapon, they did find a Ka-Bar knife sheath next to Madison Mogen, 21, one of the four victims. After they identified Kohberger as a suspect, they got a search warrant for his Amazon activity and discovered that he purchased a Ka-Bar knife with sheath and sharpening on this shopping app. Sloppy Kohberger. The other victims were Ethan Chapin, 20, Zainer Canado, 20, and Kaylee Gonsalves, 21. They were killed on November 13, 2022. Otham received the DNA sample on Thanksgiving and worked through the holiday, generating a DNA profile within 48 hours. On December 19th, the FBI sent Moscow police Kohberger's name. On December 30th, police shocked the world when they announced an arrest in the case after a raid on Kohberger's parents' house in Pennsylvania's Pocono Mountains. Detectives on the case told reporters after Kohberger's guilty plea that without the DNA evidence, they believed they would have eventually found him by examining thousands of leads regarding Hyundai Elantras. It's unclear how long that would have taken. So the DNA definitely fast-tracked everything. Although police recovered an ample sample from the snap on the sheath, Kohberger's DNA wasn't in the government's combined DNA index system known as CODIS because he hadn't been implicated in any prior crimes. Now, this works with the Hyundai Elantra now. The investigative genetic genealogy helped investigators find him with the sample anyway, and it turned out to be a key part of their case. Jeff Nye, chief of the criminal division at the Idaho Attorney General's office, who was tasked with arguing in court against Kohberger's attempt to have the evidence tossed, told Fox News Digital last month that everything hinged on his performance in court that day. He won. After Kohberger's defense failed to have the DNA evidence tossed, he entered a surprise guilty plea in early July in order to avoid the potential death penalty. It was a surprise to us, but probably not a surprise to that team. They knew they had him dead to rights. So they knew once they got that DNA evidence in, they knew he was forced to plead guilty. Kristen Middleman, Othram's chief development officer, believes that the genealogy techniques should be applied to more cases. We're advocating with the families to change that, to make sure that people have access to this real time so that people like Kohberger are caught before they commit the next crime, she told Fox News. I'm certain that there's someone at Thanksgiving with their family this year, last year, they wouldn't be if Kohberger wasn't caught in real time. Kohberger is serving 4 consecutive life sentences plus 10 years. He waived his right to appeal and to seek future sentence reduction under Idaho law. That's the article, but I wanted to read something else here too, guys, about how that DNA sampling works. You guys probably know this, but just to kind of show you how damning this evidence can be. So first, you got to find the DNA. So police collect something left behind at a crime scene like blood, hair, skin cells, or in Kohberger's case, DNA on a knife sheath. They take out the DNA. So in the lab, scientists pull the DNA out of those cells so they can study it. Then they make copies. Sometimes there isn't much DNA, so they make lots of copies so there's enough to test. Then they create a DNA fingerprint. Everyone's DNA has a unique pattern, like a barcode. The lab looks at certain spots on the DNA to build that fingerprint. And then they compare fingerprints. They check if the crime scene's DNA fingerprints matches someone's DNA, either from a database, a suspect, or even a relative, and then match found. If the patterns line up, it means the DNA almost certainly came from that person. That's how they tie Kohberger to the Idaho murder. So plain language, DNA is collected from the scene. Scientists clean it and make more of it. They turn it into a unique pattern, which is the fingerprint, and that fingerprint is compared to people's DNA. If it matches, it links the suspect to the crime. So I just wanted to give you the latest update. Love your thoughts on this. And guys, if you get a chance, please check out the video I did yesterday. It's a good video about the Ding Dong Ditch murder. An 11-year-old kid was murdered. Julian Gonzalez was murdered because he was playing a game of Ding Dong Ditch. It's a very interesting case. We had a great discussion on for about an hour and a half, and we cover a lot. So I would love your thoughts on that dialogue. As always, guys, please stay safe.